So today I'm going to be tying a 3-hackle flatwing that I use for sea bass over here in Ireland. This is in a white, lavender and sort of tan, well, a dark tan caramel sort of colour. It did quite well for me when I did a little weekend trip with some friends of mine up in Wexford, James Barry and Ben Entridge. It's pretty straightforward flatwing to tie. Now this hasn't had a rinse, this is one I've just tied now. If you rinse it and leave it to hang dry, all these bottom fibres will fold up nicely and it'll look all sleek. But yeah, these are going fishing with me later, so I'm not too fussed about that. But I'll do a quick one for you as well. So the hook is a size 1 Arex SA280, and the thread is a 150 gel spun, 150 denier gel spun. So to start off with, I'm going to trim off a little bit of white bucktail there, not too many, probably 15 strands or so. We're going to tie it in, and it's going to be 1, 2, about just over 3 lengths of the shank long. So I tend to pre-trim my bucktail points before I tie in, because I just find it just a little bit neater. So you're tying it all on top of the shank. So I've just done 2 loose wraps just to hold it in place, just in case I need to adjust it, and I'm happy with that. So apply a bit more pressure, wrap it down. Right, then this is a very fine pearl mirage that I get from Sabai. I'm just going to stick in 2 strands of this. I'm a big fan of pearl mirage. Now I've just pre-tapered the 2 strand in so they're different lengths. Now how I do my flash, depending on the length that I want it, I basically wrap it round the butt, hold one on between my thumb and forefinger on both hands, and then I wrap it round the tube of my bobbin and then pinch both sides on the other side, and that enables, and then I use my thread to guide it down to right on top of the shank, and then I wind that thread back over it. Okay, just like that. Then it's going to be your white saddle. Now on these small flatwings, I tend to not worry about a support saddle because I've got the bucktail there. If I'm doing big monster flatwings, which I don't do very often, I tend to put the support saddle because I find it more important. But on these smaller guys, I actually don't find it super important. That's me personally. I know a lot of guys put them in on every fly they do. Now the reason this is a flatwing is because the feathers are tied flat on top of the shank. Okay. Now on the saddles they generally have a sort of a thicker base which is quite flat, so it kind of lends itself to keeping it flat on the top. But if you, one of the problems I find, I don't have a cape open with me, one of the problems I find with a lot of the capes is the feathers are really long. So if you go and check out Giovanni De Pace's flatwing and Fake Deceiver YouTube videos, you can use those long feathers just by trimming off the length that you need and then adding a bit of flexible UV to the point and sort of rub it in, hit it with a light, and it'll give you a nice rigid tying base on those feathers. Because if you tie them, if I had to try and tie this feather using that little tiny quill, it tends to want to roll on the shank with you, and you end up having feathers all sitting wrong, etc. But go check out Giovanni's. He's a precision tire he does things slightly different to me as well when it comes to Bucktail, as you'll see. But sure, each their own. Right, on top of that white feather, putting in 2 strands of pearl flashabou, again just wrapping it around the bobbin, sliding it up and down the thread so it lies right on top of the quill. Then it's your lavender feather. Now this is going to be a slightly longer, so the white feather was just over 3 times the length of the shank. The lavender probably go another half shank length again past the white tip. So again, it's laying it flat. Normally what I do is I'd hold it with my thumb and forefinger in one hand and then use a bit of the base of fluff, and when I come in just push down on these as well. So I trap a bit of the base fluff into those first tying in points, and it helps to keep it from rolling as well, which is another handy thing to do. Then lock that down. Right, then I've got a little tinsel hair blend from Sabai, and this is the violet pearl. So there's a couple of different colors of flash in here. There's pearl, obviously, there's a sort of purple, I suppose you could call a light lavender, and like a purpley goldy color. I don't know what color it is, but pretty cool. 3 or 4 strands of different ones, so I just like to pick out one of each, and again I'm going to lay that on top. Now I want these to end past the tips of the lavender, so I'm wrapping it around the bobbin, probably 60-40 in length, and you'll get a staggered end point. And again, I just slid that up the bobbin, but when you want them to end, you want them to come just past those hackle tips. And again, last but not least is my tan saddle, and I'm going to want that a little bit longer than the lavender. Let's just check where that is. Yep, perfect. So again, just pinching it with my thumb and forefinger to hold it in place. A couple of wraps, make sure it's flat, and then lock it down, trim off the excess. I'm going to bring my thread to the front, and then I use this on the previous one I tied. This is a bit of silver pearl, or silver polar flash, and I'm just tying the tips in there, and then I'm going to hold it upright to keep it all on top of the shank, and then just wind back as I'm holding it up. Use the thread tension to take it back down onto the base. I'm just going to do a half hitch there, and then using a little touch of nail varnish, I'm going to seal in all those threads that are previously tied. While it's still tacky, I'm going to take that polar flash, I'm going to twist it, I'm rolling it in my fingers. There we go. And then I'm going to wind it forward. Should have centered this hook. It's not too bad, but there we go. Wind it to the front. I'm going to lock it down once, pass the thread in behind it, and then lock it down some more. Now you've got to be quite fast because you want that nail varnish to soak into the body as well. There we go. Right, I'm going to put in a little base of white. This is probably about 40 strands or so of white. Just take out any excess little funny hairs, and then you're going to want to get it about halfway along your first white saddle. You want the tips to end about halfway along there. Helps build a bit of a belly profile. Again, I've trimmed the ends off, a couple of loose wraps, make sure it's all nicely on that bottom of the shank, not the top obviously, and then tighten it down. Just make sure it's where you want it, and then just pull it back. Make sure that it's nice and evenly on either side of the hook there. Perfect. Then I'm gonna tan tails. Seen better days, but this is a proper tan. I should say this feather on the back there, it's actually more of a dark caramel rather than a tan, I should say, like a dark tan. And again, this is a light tan, probably 10 to 15 strands again. A couple of loose wraps. I want to keep it all on top of the shank and then lock it down. And then again, one each of these strands of pearl violet flashabou. Now I'm just pulling the ends out to pre-taper it, and again it's going to be 60-40 just so I get some length in there. Wrap it around the bottom, pinch it with one of my fingers, and just use the thread to line it up on top of that hook shank like so. Then we're going to use a bit of dark caramel bucktail. Now in here you can't really see it in this really crappy light, but there's a few of the dark back hairs in the dark caramel as well. Just helps add that sort of slightly darker back, so it's a little bit of a blend. So I tend to use the end of the tails once I've tied all the good stuff. I use the end of tails to topple flies like these, just because it gives a nice little blended look. So again, it's pretty much, if I take away that, it lines up with the belly hairs. Alright, then it's going to be almost done. Top it off with a few strands of peacock herl. There we go. Some good ones there. Okay, you don't want them all the same length, but it's only 3 strands on these smaller ones. There we go. You want that on top of the hook shank. You don't want it sliding to the left or right, so just be careful with your hook or your thread wraps. Make sure that it's nicely on top of the shank. Then we're going to add a couple of fake jungle cocks on either side. Now you don't need to use jungle cock, you can use your normal eyes, you can attach normal eyes, etc. But I quite like fake jungle cock, to be honest. I like consistency in my flies, and I tried real jungle cock for a while, but got it burnt a few times buying it with poor quality, so I've gone over to the synthetics. Very durable. I think these are future fly ones actually, but the best ones I have found so far is Pro Sports Fish. So what I should say, I did a couple of wraps on that, and then I folded the tabs back in over the top, and that just locks those eyes in, stops them pulling out, which they can do obviously. Right, just while I neaten up the head, I'm going to put a drop of nail varnish, soak into the thread there, but finish it off. And then just to finish off, I like to darken the head like so. My marker's getting a bit low on the marking, and then I seal off the threads, and that's your 3 feather flatwing done. Make sure I've covered all the threads there. away from your fingers and your eyes, etc. I suggest if you've got UV glasses, probably a good idea to wear them. My actual glasses are 100% UV, so I don't have to wear over glasses, but with UV I'd suggest getting some. But yeah, that's your 3 feather flatwing. Great little sand eel, any fish imitation there, but I'd use this a lot on those sort of brighter days, over sand with a sand eel. But yeah, that's it. Great little pattern. Again, like I said at the start, so I do them on the smaller ones. Anything bigger than that, I'd start to put the white hackle upside down, curved facing upwards, to support the rest of the hackles. But on these smaller ones, I found out I haven't really needed to. But yeah, that's it done. Thanks for watching.